2 years ago, I put these sunflower seeds in a water bottle, poked holes in the top, and shook it daily for a week until they grew little tails. And when I noticed these little roots start to form at the bottom of the seeds, I put them in a bigger bed of soil and waited for something to happen. Now, I didn't just do this because I wanted to grow flowers. I mean, those are always great, but I did this so I could try to grow the actual seeds inside of the flower, and then take those seeds and try to grow my own homegrown sunflower seeds. And then I could cook the meat inside of the sunflower kernel and eat it, but also have an endless amount of seeds so that every year I could grow my own flowers, seeds, and kernels to cook. So my plan was set and I was ready to go. But there was only one problem, and it's that these seeds are actually sprouts that are meant to grow salads, and they're only supposed to grow 4 to 5 inches in length. But these were sunflower seeds, and we all know what those usually turn into, so I needed to know if they would grow into actual sunflowers. And now, initially, I didn't know what would happen, but I trusted the process and waited really patiently. And while I waited, I wanted to make sure that this would work. So I also took some seeds, placed them on a piece of damp paper towel, taped them on the back door, and waited for little sprouts. And once those sprouted, I planted those too. And week after week, my seeds started to grow big in those tiny pots. And you know what? It kept growing and growing, way bigger than just 4 to 5 inch sprouts. Growth was actually quite quick because after just a few weeks, I finally started to see the stem getting bigger and bigger until I saw an actual flower starting to grow. And before I knew it, I had my first sunflower in the garden. Now all I had to do was wait for the seeds to grow, right?
Wrong.
Because this flower never ended up growing seeds. It just stayed like this, and I really had no idea why. But I knew that it was only halfway through that summer, so you can probably guess what I had to do since I was determined as ever to follow through with my plan. I got some more seeds, planted them in my garden bed, and waited a few weeks. Even though the water bottle method was really cool, I decided to just plant them straight in the ground to save time, and I also planted some in a separate pot just in case those grew faster, and then we could repot them in the garden. And you know what? Time ended up passing really quick because soon my potted sunflowers looked like this, and they were the ones that ended up growing faster, and they were ready to be repotted into the ground. So I placed them into the ground and let time do its thing. Soon, when my flowers looked like this, don't ask why, but I repotted them into a couple different pots, and soon the flowers started to grow and sprout into beautiful yellow porcelain-like flowers that looked a little something like this. But remember, I was determined to grow the seeds inside these flowers and then save them and replant them so I could grow homegrown flowers and then cook with the sunflower kernel too. And I was so excited that we had around 5 successful flowers sprouting and growing all at their own pace, and I was confident that soon we would have our own seeds grow. The actual flowers were a bit smaller than I would have imagined. Maybe it's because I repotted them into new individual pots, but I was okay with it as long as we got our seeds. I was so surprised because it actually wasn't these beautiful flowers growing in this bigger pot that grew the seeds. It was this tiny flower in this tiny pot that ended up growing the seeds, because one day near the end of the summer, I walked outside to this, a little wilting flower that looked kind of thick. I also had this flower growing that looked like it could have some seeds inside too. It was pretty fat, and I knew that it was finally time to take these 2 flowers, cut them off, and open them up to see what we were working with and whether or not there were kernels we could cook too. And if there were seeds inside, we would save and sprout for next year to have fully homegrown sunflowers. So I took the first one in my hands and started sunflower surgery. I started breaking it open and was so excited to see that there were in fact little tiny seeds that I started peeling off. As I collected them in my hands, this is what they looked like. Cute little tiny sunflower seeds that I grew myself. A win of a day, that's for sure. I even removed the shell off of some to make sure we had the actual meat inside of the seeds that grow the tails, and we did. And then I took the second sunflower in my hands and started peeling away the layers to reveal more seeds. and I was pumped. So I put them all in a little bag and dried them out so they would be ready to plant that next summer. And even though we didn't really grow a kernel that we could cook, I was confident that once we planted these new seeds that we grew, then we would complete the process. The only problem here was that I had to wait an entire other year for these to get in the ground because winter was fast approaching and the best time of year, gardening, was over. And that's what brings me to this summer, 2 years later, where I took the seeds in the plastic bag that I saved and planted them in soil. Soon, before I knew it, we had tiny sprouts that looked a little something like this, and week after week, it grew until it looked like this and it was ready for a repot. So I took it out of its pot, noticed all of the roots at the bottom, not quite root bound, and just the perfect time to repot these. And once they looked like this, I watered them and waited until it started to grow into this. And today, this is what the plant looks like. I made sure not to plant too many seeds in the pot, and I'm right on schedule with watering it so that our sunflower can finally grow both the seeds and a nice little kernel that we can take and cook. So, as I wait out the rest of the summer to see what the fate of our homegrown sunflowers will be, I went over to my local neighborhood and beaches and started planting sunflower seeds, with permission of course. And as I planted them, I remembered that waiting 730 days sprouting seeds in a water bottle that were only supposed to grow 4 to 5 inches in length brought me a whole 2-year process of learning, trial and error, and now there's only about 30 more days of waiting left to see if our homegrown sunflower experiment will finally be a true success.